Afternoon session of the budget hearings for San Bernardino County. I'll call the meeting to order, and we have a public hearing on the capital budget at 1:30, and so we'll start with that. CEO Espinosa.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have a public hearing scheduled this afternoon at 1:30, and we have our Public Works Director, Steve Wittry, here, and Adam Goldstone to review this with your board, and we'll be discussing item 52, 53, and 54, budget units 101, 102, and 101, dealing with our capital outlay, road and bridges, capital improvement projects, and the CSAs. So we have Steve Wittry here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, board members of the public. Basically, what we're here today to do is talk about capital projects. What I'm going to do is introduce Adam Goldstone, our capital projects manager. He'll be talking about our facilities projects, and then we'll go over our road projects as well. So without further ado, we'll start with Adam and let him begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and Supervisors. I'm just going to kind of go over things real quickly here on all the projects, and of course, anytime you have questions, just let me know. This year, we are looking at having 44 total projects. Of those 44, 2 are not recommended due to no available funding, and we'll talk about those. There are 19 road and bridge projects, 17 facility projects, 4 IT projects, 1 CSA capital project, and 1 equipment purchase. Of all those 44, 10 of them are new projects. The remainder are rollovers. Hopefully you should all have the packet in front of you. First off, we have the Y Road Bridge. That's a new bridge project. Limekiln Road Bridge replacement. County drainage improvements at the low water crossings. That's a new one. Continuing and new, sort of. Santa Ana Frontage Road improvements. Hospital Road Bridge replacement. John Smith realignment at the Fairview intersection. Cienega Road realignment. Anzar Road bridge replacement. Union Road bridge replacement. Pinoch Road bridge replacement. Guardrail improvements at Fairview and John Smith roads. Preventative maintenance on our bridge program. Rocks Road bridge replacement. Rosa Morada Bridge replacement, Salinas Grade guardrail improvements, San Felipe and Shore Road guardrail replacements, traffic signal at Santa Ana Fairview Road intersections, John Smith Road overlay, Union Road safety improvements, and then for our CSA capital project, it's continuing Stonegate capital improvements. For the IT projects, we have the financial system project, which you're all familiar with. Continuing IT infrastructure upgrades. A fiber optic cable infrastructure project. For our equipment and furniture purchase, we have one item there to be purchased for the road department. Another new IT project is a countywide telco system. Getting into maintenance there, we have ongoing HVAC repair and replacement. The River Parkway Regional Park project. Continuing the communication and radio infrastructure project. We have the adult detention facility expansion, the courthouse renovation, landfill expansion, the resource recovery park, ongoing river habitat conservation plan, a new one for the Habitat Bank project, a new one for hospital property relinquishment, a new one for IT office relocation, and a new one here for behavioral health renovation. Continuing the lighting for the tennis courts at San Juan School. Continuing the Veterans Memorial Park Well project. The Ag Commissioner building improvements are here. That's going to be wrapped up fairly soon, but it's there to handle any building issues. The Veterans Park restroom improvements is one of the ones not recommended due to lack of funding. Same with the Veterans Park parking lot lighting. And then we have the new county fire facilities. And then lastly is the farm worker housing, which again, project's complete. However, it's there to help with all the last-minute revenue and billing issues. Do you have any questions on any of these?
Go ahead, Supervisor Munzer.
The guardrail improvement at Fairview and John Smith. If that ever gets realigned, would those guardrails still be needed, or are they kind of needed?
They'll be shortened. Essentially, what's going to happen is those guardrails are going to wrap around the corner because it's kind of an skewed intersection. The guardrail is still necessary to keep vehicles that may cross the road from entering into the creek that's there. So what's going to happen is that when the realignment occurs, the last, as it loops around this backside, will be taken off. But the part that's in the front that will come from the bridge abutment will still stay there. So part of it will be going away with the realignment aspect of it.
And how far down the line are we with the realignment?
The realignment, as just for, once again, to the public and the members of the board, we're still battling with our issues with the tiger salamander. One of the projects that we have on here now is a habitat conservation, which we're trying to find ways to work through that process. So it really is depending on our environmental issue hang up still as we try to find mitigation land for that particular species. But that's what we have now identified as another project to work through that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any other questions?
Oh, go ahead.
Supervisor De La Cruz? Or Supervisor Barros?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the new ones. When you say new, you mean we have, some of these look familiar, but are you saying new because they were not here at the March 28th when we, well, maybe not March 28th, but further back when we started talking about our capital improvements? Have these been added?
Yeah, not speaking on all of them, I'd have to look at each one again, but typically when it's new, it wasn't in last year's CIP.
But it was in the beginning, it was at the beginning of the budget meetings that we were.
Yes.
Because I don't remember the bank project, and I think the reason I want to talk a little bit about this is, when you're talking about the bank project, are you talking about San Benito River Bank?
We haven't identified the land yet. This is more of a project to determine what would be suitable land.
Okay, so
for
then
a habitat
bank, you're talking about an actual place that you could
Yes.
bank
Land.
our land. Got it, okay.
Land bank, yes.
Yeah, because I thought, well, this has to be incorporated with the river, with Pajaro River, I'm sure, but you're talking about not a river bank.
Correct.
Okay.
Just suitable habitat for some of the species. that
Suitable
we're
habitat,
dealing with.
okay. And the hospital project relinquishment, with that one we've had
Yeah,
before.
you're aware of that one.
And we've talked about the office relocation project, and we've talked about behavioral health and the lighting. I believe that's not a new one, but I think that was it. Yeah. And the
Yeah, you
ones that
probably
are.
heard of most, we've been
Yes.
talking about some of them, but now they're officially, coming to the CIP.
Okay. And then the very last thing that I want to make sure that we're not going to move forward are the Veterans Park. Both of these are Veterans Park projects. And you said the funding is not available. What funding were we counting on before? Because I think we did have these.
These were projects that were recommended by the Parks and Rec Commission as wanting to get on the radar of things that maybe should be tackled, but they were not able to identify funding, and neither were we at this time to complete those. However, we wanted to put it forth to the board to let them know about it.
Okay, so then the Parks and Recreation Commission is very well aware of this, the fact that we're not moving forward with these for lack of funding.
The recommendation basically was that they would fund as much as they could towards the River Parkway and Regional Parkway, and then those other projects, the lighting and the Veterans Park projects, would wait until future funding was identified. That was their recommendation from Parks and Rec Commission. It's up to the board to determine if that's appropriate, because those projects at Vets Park would be available for impact fees as well, but it's been identified by the Parks and Rec Commission that they wanted to put as much money as possible towards the regional park.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor David Cruz?
The adult detention facility is partially, well, mostly funded by AB 900. And I see that there's a list of other funding sources, and one of them is traffic impact fees. Is that because there's going to be some traffic to be considered?
Let's see. I think we might have missed taking that out of the one portion there. That was intended at one time just to be the loan to help float some of the payments. It was never going to be the ultimate funding source.
Okay.
That was a kind of an interim
So
financing.
are we still going through that mechanism process?
No, after several meetings with Joe Paul Gonzalez, that's why it's been changed at the bottom of the table underneath the AB 109 funding. You'll see general fund interdepartment labor. That's
I was going to ask you, what does that mean?
right. No, that's what he had identified as what we would be using to cover our portion and some of the
Is that
floating payments.
local resources, like Steve's time, Joel's time?
Yeah, that's the staff time
The
that's
staff
contributed
time.
to the project as part of our
And
match.
then the capital reserves, what reserves are we talking about?
That was money that was brought in when we first started to look at applying for the Phase 2 project.
Okay.
We took some of that from the elevator replacement project just to get us started and be able to fund the application process. So there's still a little funds left. We didn't use it all on the consultant, and so we're leaving it in there.
Okay, so we don't have to go out and find some type of financing mechanism to finance this complete project? So
No,
we're
not-
100% financed now on the detention?
Yes. After working with the auditing office, we're able to cover our share.
Okay, and then I wasn't asked questions about the lighting at a tennis court in San Juan School, and I see this 25,000, and I'm making a comparison to the lights at Veteran Memorial Park, and it's 200,000 versus 25,000. Because my question was going to be, if it was comparable in price, where do you really want the maximum amount of community members using the lights? Is it the Vets Park or is it San Juan School? And I only to bet Vets Park gets used a lot. And if we can move some of those activities to nighttime, it will be a lot better.
Well,
Are you suggesting that
Yes,
people
I am.
just play tennis during the day in San Juan? Come on.
You remind me of an argument I had when I was on the Parks and Rec Commission for City Hollister. A good friend of mine, Dave Bumgarner,
Yeah.
where he was lobbying for lights at the tennis court at Dunn Park, and I said, well, we could use that money for something else. It's much better use.
Well,
Same thing, Mr. Chairman.
yeah, what we've done, we're not sure what the final cost would be. That's what was allocated for those lights. The light standards and were donated out of the old tennis courts from Ridgemark in that parking lot, if you recall. They took out those tennis courts and someone took them away. And what we're hoping to do is retrofit them to fit the San Juan tennis courts, and it's just a cost-effective way. Hopefully, it doesn't cost $25,000, but they have a good youth program teaching young people how to play tennis, and it's school property. It's a partnership between the Roma San Juan School District and the county to establish those lights, and I think we're getting some mileage
Okay, so the
out of that.
so I
And a
imagine-
private partnership as well. Is a lot of the work is to be donated by individuals that. So it's a number there. I don't know. I don't think it's a take that much money,
Okay.
but
Well, it's the same positions Supervisor Barges will say about other parks facilities. Yeah. And so the maintenance will be taken care of by the school district, right? Is that correct, Steve?
That's our understanding of the
That's
project,
correct,
yes.
yeah.
Basically, what we are is a funding mechanism to basically provide the capital to get the lights in operation. It'll be a use agreement similar to what we have at Spring Grove School or some of the other agreements with the city they would take care of the maintenance
And the members of the community besides the school district will be able to use that too, right?
on non-public times, on non-school times, yes.
Okay. What is non-school time? Is that up to 3 o'clock, 4
Well,
o'clock?
if it's lighting, then yeah, basically between 8 a.m. and 3 o'clock, when the school's in session, you can't have the public on there.
That I
But,
support. After that, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, the public can use it. Because we're having a lot of, facilities that, groups that use it mostly to say, this is our this is our park, this is our facility, no one can use it. And I'm getting tired of that. And I want to make sure it's a community use and it's members of the public can also use it. Okay, thank you. I do appreciate it. And my final thought, Mr. Chair, input is the county fire facilities. This is a new one. It's a $974,000 and it's coming out of fire impact fees.
Yeah, and CAO Espinoza may be able to speak a little more on this, but basically with the, the new contract, this is just a way to get the funds, the fire impact fees that we have allocated in the budget, should we need them for various projects or purchases throughout the year. This way it gets it in there. Nothing's really identified yet.
Okay, that was
but,
my next question. Do we already have identified areas?
Yeah, this is a way to allocate it so that it's available should you need it.
Who makes that decision?
And, Mr. Chair, if I may?
Okay, sure, CEO.
My thoughts on this and my recommendation is to come back to your board. If there's going to be any project, significant project that your board needs to be aware of, we'd definitely bring that for your approval on any kind of a project. Again, there's small things that they need, hoses and other things that are, that's just fine. But anything significant, big, we'll definitely bring it
That's
back to
good.
your board.
Okay. No, thank you very much. Good report.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on that as well. I think, because that caught my eye just now glancing at this, is that you're, go ahead, allocate availability, the whole amount that we have available in the impact fees, with the idea that we're not going to spend it all. Right? Unless
Exactly.
it's absolutely essential
Yes.
things. Okay, but we did, maybe made a verbal promise to Hollister to help with a facility
Yes.
for X amount of dollars,
Yes.
as well as San Juan. And that's going to come back at a future date as far as formalizing that number?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right, that's,
And Mr. Chair, we do have one correction to make on the financial system project. If you could turn to that page real briefly. It's just a changing of the funding allocations.
Page 21.
Good afternoon, board members. The financial system project, budget unit 3,800, we are requesting to reduce the total project budget by $334,048 to reflect a change that is being recommended by the CAO's office. Health and Human Services budget, Human Services Administration budget unit 2211, 500 is being recommended to be reduced by $185,718, as well as the mental health budget 22-21406 in the amount of $114,933. The combined reduction is being recommended to move over into this capital project.
Excuse me, for clarity on that, actually, my apologies, it's $185,718 that actually we need to have allocated there. So the difference is actually a different number, as well as $114,933 should actually be in that line item.
Oh.
So it's the difference. So the difference is $363,000. $363,949 is actually the difference. Which
My
would be,
mistake.
yeah.
So with that, the reduction to this project will be taking in this additional revenue. We have it listed as an interfund subvented in the amount of $634,600 on this capital. That will be replaced with this new revenue source. So we will be reducing this project budget by that dollar amount, the $360K.
And, Mr. Chair, and the reason why is because there's part of this project is going to be, these departments need to have the system, and in essence, what we're doing is using the cost plan as a direct charge up front to be able to get the project started, is what we're doing. And there are, items within their budget or within their departments that they need to have done on the financial system. So that's what these funds are going to be allocated for.
okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I have a few, Mr. Chair, that I hadn't had an opportunity to really look at very
Okay,
closely.
I have a quick one then while
Okay,
you
go
take a
ahead.
look at it. You know, the guardrails, and the Union Road safety improvement, are there guardrails that we might be taking out and updating or improving the standard level? You know, one of the things that still crosses my mind about the Union Road realignment and the problem that we explored, Steve, is there any way we could bring some temporary relief to that property that, you know, what I'm speaking of?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about there. As I said, I think that the guardrails on that subject property that you're referring to on the inside curve there may relieve one particular problem, but it won't make that any safer out there, because as we've discovered through reports from CHP, when the accidents happen there, it's actually people who are over correcting for going too fast on the corner on the outside, or the eastbound traffic, and they actually cross the oncoming traffic, and then they end up on the subject property. One thing, knock on wood, since we've done some more signage out there and repainted out there a little bit, we haven't seen incidents happen out there, but and it has helped a little bit. The bridge realignment is the ultimate solution, because that will take that corner out. Putting rails that we were taking off somewhere else that we're replacing, the reason we're replacing is because they're substandard. So if we put substandard rails back over there, that doesn't really help us in terms of something happening over there. I think it's just kind of an unfortunate situation for her. The safety projects out there really aren't at her stretch, but as we move forward and we are entering into, very close entering into the land acquisition aspect for Union Road, so the relief is in sight on that one.
Okay, all right, thank you. Supervisor Barrios?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have named a lot of bridge work. On page 12, it just says Preventive Maintenance Bridge Program. Is this going to be specific only to Cienega Road?
The preventative maintenance program? No, the preventative maintenance program is system-wide, which is the county-wide, and that's the process that we go through to identify bridges that may be subpar or need work. Basically what happens is Caltrans goes through, we reimburse them for that. They prepare basically a checklist of all of our bridges in the county and identify deficiencies. We just received ours about 4 weeks ago or so, and we have a deficiency list that's about 5.5 pages long. They identify it, and then we apply the preventative maintenance to it. The deficiencies that we're seeing are things like there's a warning sign. It's black and yellow. It's hash marks. It's supposed to be on each side of the bridge. If something hits that or damages it, it becomes, you know, not visible to the traffic. We need to replace that. Those are things that they mark down. Or if there's a pothole near the approach, county crews go out there and fix that. So they go through that and help us do the preventative maintenance, make sure that we're up to snuff. But
Okay.
it's system-wide. It's not just one
It's
bridge.
not, yeah, the only one that it showed was Cienega Road, and I thought it was the only one that it was
Yeah, it's just
specific to.
it was just
generic.
a
Okay.
general.
All right, and then Supervisor Patel, I had questions on Union Road safety improvements, but you've answered those. And the last one is the courthouse renovation. Now, we are going through the process right now of identifying what departments are going to need what in there. So this $352,000 then is money that we can use towards remodeling, changing, because one of the rankings that we put at the last meeting, or that we're going to talk about, was the departments having money to do these improvements. So is this money going to assist all departments, or tell me a little bit about this?
Well, you see the first funding source there is tobacco securitization or capital reserves.
Right.
That was stuff that was there primarily for the elevator, maybe some HVAC, building-wide type things. The recorder's office has a modernization fund. They were willing to allocate $200,000. That would likely involve things that would help, you know, the recorder's situation because of the needs of the documents and things like that that they have. Some of it may be building-wide, some of it may be specific to their area. We don't know. That's just what they were able to pledge.
So is the recorder's office the only one that has, or department, the only one that has money?
That's been identified so far.
That has been, so that could increase then? This funding could increase based on what the other departments have?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, you're welcome. Any other questions from the board? Okay, at this time, I guess I have to open the public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Any comments or questions or from the public?
Good afternoon, Marty Richmond from Hollister. I have two questions for through the chair that may indicate I need to make a statement. The questions are on the two projects that were not funded: the Veterans Park parking lot lighting and the Veterans Park restroom. Are they eligible to be funded by park impact fees? Is my question. And then I'll make a comment based on the answer.
Okay, I believe so.
Mr. Chair, yes, that is correct. Yeah, they
Yeah.
came in.
Thank you. So I'd like to make a comment based on that. My worst nightmare is coming true here. We have the Veterans Park. It is well used. You go out there on a nice night, and it's just full of people, used by all kinds of people. It needs $100,000 for parking lot lighting, and it needs $100,000 for restrooms. And if you need a restroom in the dark, you need a restroom. I mean, there's no two ways about it. But where's the money going? $2 million something for the new parkway, Master Parkway. So our dream park is going to suck off the funding of what we already have and make it less suitable. When only $200,000 would improve that park enormously. That was my problem when I wrote a column about this park. It is $40 million just to do the regional park. We're going to take more than $2 million and siphon it off, and we will get almost nothing for that. We might get some land use, but we will not, we'll be $38 million short of doing anything when we need merely $200,000 to make a massive improvement to Vets Park, which is already one of the busiest parks in the community. I think the Park Commission has fallen in love with their new 24-year-old girlfriend, and their old girlfriend or their old wife is not going to get anything. Thank you.
Oh, man, that's rough. Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public?
That's a hard thing to
Man,
beat.
that's a tall one to come back. I'll close the public comment period and bring it back to, the board. And I think that is a pretty, compelling statement in the fact that we do have to, improve the current facilities that we have and allocate funds that we have available. And I think in light of what's going on in Hollister and their agreements with the school districts, we have an obligation to keep our park as suitable to be used at all times of the day for the need of the community. So I don't know, anyone else have a comment, or Supervisor Barrios?
Yeah, I do. And don't forget that the recommendations from the Parks and Rec Commission come after a lot of input from the community. And the community has prioritized. And yes, we have been doing a lot of improvements regularly to our Veterans Memorial Park, and it is a highly used park. But my point is that it is so highly used because there isn't another park that people can go to, and that is one of the reasons why the Parks and Recreation Committee or Commission is concentrating on the River Parkway, because the first part of that will provide more fields and more areas for the community. So that's why they're prioritizing that. And that's not to say that they're leaving the Veterans Memorial Park to fall apart. They're just concentrating on that at this time.
Well, I know, we've had the discussion before, and I'm pretty critical of the parks plan right now, because I think it's a little bit too much too soon for a small community. And I think development of ball fields would be make a lot more sense at Brigantino Park, and it's just a grassy field right now, and it wouldn't take much. We own the land, or the city owns the land already. They got the water available there, and we go a long ways with a little bit of money to have 5 or 6 soccer fields, 5 or 6 baseball fields, and for our youth and adults to be used. But in the meantime, we also, I've had constituents complain about Vets Park, and there's a lot of volunteers with Little League that have kept up the pipelines and the plumbing and the existing concession stands and restrooms, and we can't even pump water to those facilities right now because the lines aren't good. And I think we're better off, instead of land acquisition, or minimize that land acquisition and for the River Parkway and invest it back into the lands that we own already. But that's been my long-standing feeling. It's great to have an aquatic park and some of this other stuff, but the basics was a River Park trail, and we've gotten away from that. The Parks Commission took a yard and went 2 miles with it, and I felt that for a long time and still feel the same way about it, but in respect of the Parks Commission and the board, I think we should look at these projects here. Any other comments? Directions? So you identified in these, like the Veterans Park restroom improvements, it's identified as a project but no funding available. And that's the same to be true for the Veterans Park parking lot lighting. And I know Supervisor De La Cruz alluded to this, the $25,000 that's allocated for a tennis court. But again, it's a partnership that's in place and getting a lot of lighting for a minimal amount of money. I'm going to make a motion and take a crack at it that we take some of that $200,000 and fund the Veterans Park restroom improvements and the Veterans Park lighting with the the park funding that we have available. I'll make that motion right now as a capital outlay.
Do we have to have a second to discuss it?
Yeah.
Okay, then for discussions, I'll second it.
Okay, for discussion, Supervisor Munzer.
My understanding was the impact fees were tied to the River Trail Park. Am I wrong in that understanding?
Basically, the impact fees can be used for various projects that have been identified for the county. In our then current, we have a new master plan now that we've adopted recently. Previously to that, the only project that was available was the River Parkway because we have pretty much accomplished everything else. With our master plan, we have the ability to put annual basis. So those funds could be utilized for anything that improves or offers extended use time or safety improvements to meet available to increase safety at night for more use at that park. So since it's an expansion of use is what the impact fees are to help with expansion, that fits very nicely. The restrooms the same way. The restrooms right now are crowded. More restrooms because of the expanded use out there requires more people in the community, more people to pay those impact fees, more use out there. It's meeting that expansion of use. So that's the test that we use, whether it's available for those funds or not. If it's something that allows an expansion of use because of more population or because more usage of a facility, it would be eligible for use for those project funds.
Okay.
Does that help?
So the impact fees were set up for parks, not just for the River Trail Park?
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
That's exactly correct.
But somehow I got the impression the impact fees was set up just for the River Trail Park, and that's not
No,
correct.
that's incorrect.
Okay, thank you.
But, Mr. Chair,
Let me recognize Supervisor Barrios, and I'll come back to you, Supervisor De La Cruz.
And we have used some of the money that we had here for the, most recently for the well.
For the
Is
well,
that
exactly,
correct?
exactly.
So we are investing back into the park by putting the well, and also there were a few other things that we did last year. I don't remember what they were. So we have invested. It's not like it has been completely
Park
ignored.
impact fees, the other ones that we did at both the Historical Park and at Veterans Park were from a different grant funding source. They were different proposition dollars. Actual park impact fee dollars, largely with the exception of what we just approved for the well project, have
Right.
been kind of tied into the River Parkway
To the River
process.
Parkway, yeah,
We
so-
haven't done any other project with those fundings in the last 18 months or so.
Right, but we have been using money to improve the park by
yes.
providing the water.
I've been a big
Yeah.
supporter
So
of
I just
that,
wanted to
yeah.
make sure that the public understands that we haven't completely ignored the veterans. We're just, and because I'm a huge proponent on the River Parkway because of the extra area that it can make available to the community, we have to start somewhere. And at some point, we have to choose which way we're going to go. And this board has chosen that already in a prior meeting, so just to set the record straight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor De La Cruz?
I was going to say the same thing Supervisor Barrios was going to said. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and my question that I have that might help give some clarification is, you know, the board is interested in acquiring the property for the River Parkway. We don't own the River Parkway yet, or any of the property down there.
A little bit, very little bit.
Very little. And my question is, are we talking about the same pot of money, the $2 million? That's the impact fees. And
It is.
this is a small percentage of that. And when do we plan on coming back and informing the board of the feasibility of acquiring what we need to kind of at least be taking those initial steps for the River Parkway? When is that supposed to come back in?
Unfortunately, in the last week or two, with the direction to have the CAO involved with the availability of the budget process, it's been very difficult to get some of his time to meet with those property owners to negotiate. And we've also have an additional complexity of one of the key members of the high school district is no longer going to be employed over there very longer. Stan Rose has taken another job at a different district, so he's gone essentially July 1st, is our understanding. So as we hopefully get through this budget process in a very short order and then take care of any extra furlough time that I know that Mr. Espinoza and I both have to try to burn at the end of the month here, we look at meeting with those property owners in July and then bringing back to the board probably first part of August.
You know, kind of, I'm going to conclude with this then. The way I see these two projects, parking lot lighting, to me, that's a safety issue. Someone trips and falls in the parking lot because of inadequate lighting because they're using our facilities at night, we're liable. That's a public safety concern that I have. And I really believe we should fund that one because $200,000 might be cheap.
May I ask a question with that comment, Mr. Chair? May I ask you, we have lighting there already?
No.
Not at all?
The only
Because
lighting
I
that's
know-
there is the sports fields. And when
Is
the
the sports
when the
fields,
sport
but
field
not on
lighting
the-
goes down,
Uh-huh.
the sport field lighting goes down, it is very dark at that facility.
Okay.
There are
I didn't know.
no,
I thought we had some lighting, but only on the fields.
and we have an uplight at the flag. But other than that, at the American flag, it's lit.
Reason
There is
I-
no parking light.
No
Yeah.
parking lot.
Reason I know that is I used to play softball a few years ago, and if you're in a late game and you warm up in the parking lot, and when I determined that I was getting a little too old to play softball was the night I saw the ball coming at me, plunk, right in the middle of the forehead. And it wasn't another year went by that I decided to quit playing softball because
Well, I have an
it
argument.
was dark.
I have an argument for you on that. I got my nose broken playing softball, and it was completely lit up. So I'm not sure that has any value to me.
You know your softball days are over when that happens.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and the second thing is the restrooms. Do we have restrooms out there?
We do.
We have restrooms out there, yes, we do.
So would that be an item that we kind of, would that be a reasonable compromise that for, I don't want to deplete the fundings for the River Parkway either, but I feel that, you know, one of these two projects should be funded and you know, I'm concerned about the lighting because that's something that can happen real easily, and you know, and that's safety for everybody, whether you trip on the cement or who knows what happens when it's dark. So that's why I'm pushing for that so hard.
Well, may I ask our CAO, Mr. Chair, if I could, in acquiring the land, is it a possibility that this may not be enough funding to acquire the land, where we will be short and not be able to move forward with? I mean, I know everything has to go through negotiations. It's all going to be done in closed session until everything's done. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to handcuff us and not be able to go forward with the direction that we've already given, because we're going to go in a different direction than what we've already approved. And the other thing, one more thing, is that this came from the Parks and Recreation Commission, and I'm sure it didn't come lightly. It was done with a lot of discussion, and I don't want to undermine what they feel is important and have moved forward at this time, so.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, yeah, you know, we've been doing some research on that. I know that the Public Works Department's been, went out and got appraisals. So we have an idea of what those costs are, and we have an idea of what we have, sort of to speak, in the bank. But, you know, I don't, you know, those are kind of behind this, you know, the door, because we still have to
Right.
negotiate and work out those, you know, what those actual costs are going to be. So I really can't give you a definite answer on that, just because there are unknowns, really.
Now,
be quite
could we
honest.
go back, if I still have the floor, Mr. Chair, could we go back and revisit this if once we get all the negotiating done, and if there's excess money, can we use then, can we, in the middle of the year, next quarter, come back and revisit this capital improvement?
Well, as long as, and that's the reason why we're allocating a lot of these projects, because, you know, for the ability to do that. So, you know, I think we can.
Okay.
Okay. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, what I would like to see done, or I think needs to occur, is once we get the, essentially the quote and what it's going to take to acquire the land for the River Parkway, I think what needs to happen is we need to have a debate on whether we actually want to acquire the land, because it may be way beyond what we have, you know, in the bank already. And then, you know, I think what we need to do is we need to evaluate projects such as this at Veterans Park, and the idea at maybe working with the city to establish some type of soccer fields or baseball, softball fields out at the Brigantino Park. I think that all that stuff needs to be evaluated, you know, for use of this money. If that, you know, if land acquisition is really above and beyond what we are able to fund, that way we could address our immediate needs.
You know, and that's a good comment as well. And my thought is that we got to get out of the mode of thinking that we have X amount of dollars worth to work with for a land acquisition. If, say, we go for the River Parkway, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to just one lump sum check pay the, you know, the owners. Maybe it could be financed through a period of time. The Parks Commission, what they've sold this plan on is, you know, the premise that there would be public-private partnerships. Why couldn't that be a source of some of the money for the capital acquisition of property? But we shouldn't allow ourselves to get locked into this, you know, this plan at the expense of what's needed at the other parks that serve other people in the community. And that's what I'm afraid, that we're getting locked into this and going into just that one tunnel vision idea. But there's other ways of, you know, financing, you know, property. And that's what they said, that this is not just about San Mateo County having a river parkway, but this is a conglomerate of partnerships working together to achieve the goals of that plan.
And that is correct, Mr. Chair. The partnerships would be after the land is acquired, which would be for the facilities themselves, for the improvements, but not, we couldn't acquire those partnerships without a plan, full plan with property owned by the county in order to be able to sell the project to partners. So that's the idea behind acquiring the land first.
Okay. Anyway, any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, on this lighting, Steve, is it mostly for safety? Because I'm thinking it's not going to increase available time playing the fields because they already have the lights. Would that increase available time?
It won't increase available time per se because the time up there is 10 p.m. for lights to go out. That's what we've agreed
Okay.
upon from the users or not. But it is with the amount of users that are out there, typically we don't have all the fields using at that point in time. There may be the opportunity to extend later for some or others, because as you've all been out there, when the lights go off, either it's heat or it's the adult softball field, when the lights go off, it is very dark. It is primarily a safety project to get whoever it is, either the adult softball leagues or the Hollister Heat girls or the Little League kids, back to their vehicles and stuff so they don't get some kind of incident,
Yeah.
either a trip or another vehicle.
Yeah, I remember when I used to umpire, and I always stay late for the kids because they'll shut the lights. The kids will shut the light, and I will be the only adult there, and I'll drive with them, walk with them out the gate because you're right, it was all dark. Yeah, okay.
Okay, Supervisor Munzer?
So Steve, are these parking lot lights going to be able to stay on longer than the field lights?
Because they are down angled and they are not the big stadium lights that have to be up, it's going to be much more along the lines of street lights as opposed to a stadium lighting a field.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Okay, so
we're
they will
talking,
be able to stay on longer?
yeah, we're talking lights similar to when ours works over here in the parking lot, you know, for the vehicles and whatnot, yeah.
Okay, the motion was to approve both items, and so I'll call for the vote on that motion. The Veterans Parks restroom and the Veterans Parks parking lot lighting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose?
No?
No.
Okay, 3-2. Ayes were myself and Supervisor Rivas, and the other supervisors were no.
Move on.
Okay, so I'm going to make one more motion. I'm going to make one more motion and see if this flies. I make a motion that we set funding available for Veterans Park parking lot lighting. And I make a motion that we approve at least that safety item. Well, I guess the motion will have to die, but I tried.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else we need to do with capital improvements? Do we have to have a temporary due pass?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll entertain that motion.
Motion for temporary due pass, Mr. Chair.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
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 Oppose? Hearing none. Okay, thank you very much for
Thank you.
the report. Now,
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair,
what's that?
Steve, is the discussion occurring now for the Brigantino facility?
Discussion in terms of,
I mean, this is a city and the county as a Park and Rec Commission. Are they talking about what's the next phase of the Brigantino project? Park?
you know, I don't normally attend the intergovernmental meetings. I know that at staff level it has been, but intergovernmental is I think, tasked to address that because it is a city-county issue which in terms of how much it's going to use. So I would assume that would be the venue.
Yeah, that's right. We talked about that. That's right.
And, Mr. Chair, we did, if I could, we did talk about the Brigantino Park, and I believe the city had an obligation to keep it for a certain period of time as a reclaimed water park and could not be used, they had limitations, in other words, before they could actually open it up to the public. I'm not sure that they're there yet, but we have talked about it. We are trying to coordinate some sort of use from of that park.
And to clarify that just a little bit, it is open to the public, and the public can utilize it. What they were concerned about was to how a sports team or a sports venue or a league play could occur out there. That was where the hang-up was
Yeah,
in
that
terms of
is
the long
true.
term. But it
Yeah.
is open to the public. The public can go out there and utilize it dusk to dawn. That's their hours out there. As long as there's no mountain lions that have been sighted out there, it's okay to go. But the community is free to use it right now. You don't need a reservation. They can drive out there. They can use it. They can throw a frisbee. They can fly a kite. It is open to the public from dusk to dawn. But the concern that was expressed was the actual sports league play and things
Yeah,
of that
and
nature.
it wasn't available for that
That's correct.
yet.
That's
So they're working on it,
Yeah.
and it has been requested from the intergovernmental to continue to look at that and hopefully move it forward a little bit faster.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I guess we have to move on to 53.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Item 53, budget item 102, roads and bridges capital improvement projects.
We actually kind of lumped those together into the same item, so if we
Okay.
can get a temporary do pass with that aspect for clarity purpose, it was in the same report. We talked about the bridges,
Mr. Chair.
unless there are more questions about that.
Motion for temporary due pass on that one.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. And we'll do 54 real fast. And so the county service areas, budget item 101. Then we'll go back to libraries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to turn it over to Lynette Redmond, our CSA coordinator, to give the report on that. She has a couple of handouts for additional information in case there are questions regarding the CSAs themselves. Lynette?
Zero.
I'll just wait till you can have a chance to get your reports and take a look at them. So what you have are the individual budgets for the county service areas. And the format is it was changed last year at the request of the auditing department. The schedules that you see, these are required by the state. And so last year we changed, and we present our budgets now so they're in line with the state reporting requirements. So if you'd like, I can go through each individual CSA. We can just do a quick run through, and I can talk about the services that we're currently providing. Well, first off, we have 30 CSAs in the county, and 5 of those were funded back when AB 8 set the guidelines for CSA funding. And there's not an additional fee that's charged to these CSAs. We actually get a 1% from their property tax, and then that goes for CSA purposes. There's 17 CSAs that are funded through the Prop 218 process, and those have been passed. Well, the initial one, Prop 218 elections were passed 3 years ago, so those are the CSAs that you're probably more familiar with. 4 of the CSAs, they have no fee. The residents or the property owners in those CSAs decided that they did not want the county to continue with the CSA services. So through their homeowners association, they handle all of the services that the county would otherwise provide for them. And then we have 4 CSAs. They do not have fees as well. They did not have successful Prop 218 elections. And so the only thing that we provide are essential services, essential storm drain services, and that is funded through existing fund balances. So on the first page, we'll start with CSA 4. And CSA 4 is one of the AB 8 CSAs, so we get the 1% of their property tax that goes to their CSA fund. Currently, we provide street lighting, and then when this CSA was established, streetlights were the only identified service by LAFCO. And so what we plan to do is go back to LAFCO and add road improvements, because this CSA does need some road improvements, and we have a pretty substantial fund balance. And so hopefully, hopefully this quarter, we'll be able to go to LAFCO and get them to increase their services so we can do some much-needed road improvements.
May I ask a question, Mr.
Yes.
Chair? Lynette, they don't have to go through the 218 process?
No, because they're funded through the AB8. And so that money is already designated, that 1% of their property
you were
tax.
talking about.
Yes.
Okay, so this
Right.
is one of the,
This is-
one of the 13 that don't have to go through a process out of this. 17
One
have
of the
to go
5.
through a- There's only 5? that-
There's 5 that were established
I
under the
missed that
AB8
part.
rules.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So looking at CSA 5, which is Hillcrest El Toro, this is also one of the AB8 CSAs. We currently provide streetlights, and as with the previous one, we wish to expand the services to include road improvements, and if that's the case, we'll have a capital road improvement project. Same again with CSA number 8, Bonnie View. CSA 9, that's Ridgemark. They're also an AB8 CSA, and we currently provide streetlights, storm drainage, landscape, and road maintenance. Those are approved CSA services. CSA 11 is Barnes Lane. That's the final AB8 CSA. We provide streetlights, and again, we're trying to expand services to do a capital road improvement project. CSA 16, they're a Prop 218 CSA. We currently provide storm drainage, road maintenance, and street lighting. CSA 19 is Springwood. We currently provide storm drain essential services. They did not pass a fee, and so we only do storm drainage on an as-needed basis. CSA 21 is Long Acres. We provide storm drainage, road maintenance, and street lighting. CSA 22 is Cielo Vista. We currently provide wastewater treatment services for this CSA. CSA 23, they're another Prop 218 CSA, and they've approved fees for storm drain and road improvement. CSA 24, another Prop 218 CSA, and they've approved fees for storm drainage, road improvements, and street lighting. CSA 25 is Vineyard Estates, and they did not pass a 218 fee, so we only provide those storm drainage services as needed, and it's funded through their existing fund balance. CSA 28 is Fox Hill Circle Heatherwood Estates. They have a Prop 218 fee. We provide storm drainage, street lights, and roads. CSA 30 is McCloskey Acres. They do not have a fee, and so we provide storm drainage on an as-needed basis. CSA 31 is Stonegate. We currently provide water treatment and street lights. And we're nearing the end of their well project, and so I imagine we might see some changes to this budget. It's probably going to take a good year of operations to figure out what their new well will be producing and how that affects the budget. So we may see some minor modifications to this. CSA 33 is Toronto Estates. They do not have a CSA fee. We had been in communications talking to them about perhaps getting a refund, having their fund balance refunded to them, to their homeowners association, so they could take care of the CSA services. But communications have, we really haven't moved forward with communications, so right now we're not moving forward with that refund until we get additional feedback from them.
And what is their other financing source? Where's that coming from?
Oh, when you look down, yeah, the other financing sources, that's their fund balances.
Oh.
So what we do is we allocate fund balances for all the CSAs, and then whatever we don't use goes back into their fund balance. This was something that we learned that other CSAs around the state are doing, and that way, if there is any kind of emergency or additional funds that need to be used, of course, we would come to the board, but then we've already allocated them, so they are available. CSA 34 is a Prop 218 funded CSA, and we provide storm drainage, streetlights, and road maintenance. 35, another 218 CSA, and again, storm drainage, road maintenance, and streetlights. Same with CSA 42, storm drainage, streetlights, and road maintenance. CSA 46, also funded by Prop 218 funds, is storm drainage, road maintenance, streetlights, and also their landscaping. CSA 47, Oak Creek, is the same. CSA 48, funded by Prop 218, with storm drainage and road maintenance. CSA 50 is Dunville, and we currently provide water treatment, streetlights, and storm drainage. Oh, yeah, and CSA 50 is also funded by Prop 218 fees.
And then going through another one, so.
Oh, and actually, Dunville came to us and requested that we increase their fee. Over the years, we've discovered that their fee is not enough to cover capital improvements for their water treatment plant. So in July, the second meeting in July, you'll see that request for a fee increase. And again, that was something that came from the homeowners. CSA 51 is Comstock, and they have a Prop 218 fee, and we provide road maintenance and storm drainage. CSA 53 also has a Prop 218 fee. We provide storm drain, road maintenance, streetlights, and landscaping. And this year, we do plan to do a capital improvement project for their roads. It's time to have a slurry seal done, so we'll do that. And then CSA 54 is Pacheco Creek, and they have a Prop 218 fee, and it covers their sewer treatment and storm drainage. And then the pages following this, those are all just the roll-ups, kind of a summary page. It shows their fund balances, and then a roll-up of all their expenses.
Okay, any questions from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion. Or, wait, I'm
For
sorry.
formalities, we have to open the public hearing to allow that for formalities. Do we open the public hearing for this item?
Oh, we have to have
As the CSA.
public hearing? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll open up the public hearing. Anyone from would like to comment on this? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Move to approve, Mr. Chair, temporary due pass.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, thank you. Yeah, I thought it was a public hearing too, but I didn't see it on the agenda the way it was written, and that made sense.
Okay. Thank you, and I want to thank Lynette. Obviously CSAs over the last couple of years, no comments. It's fantastic. Not that we're not interested in comments, we're just dealing with them before they get to the board level, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, now we'll move back to item 88, Unit 610, the county library.
Okay, the county library department can be found on page 226 of your budget packet. There was a change this year from last year in the county library in the membership line item. The county librarian requested an additional $9,000 in membership dues. Being a member of MOBAC, in increasing the membership to MOBAC by $9,000, that allowed her to have additional resources available in the county library. And I believe that was the only change in her budget this year. And so total expenditures are $805,876 with revenues of $104,300. I'd like to request a temporary due pass.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, there was a mention of an additional 9,000 in membership dues for resources. Can we get, a little more information on what specific resources those are?
What that membership would,
Yeah.
These are the databases that we have in the library. This year, we have augmented the existing databases to include legal forms, which are asked for quite a bit from the public. We're also including Testing and Educational Resource Center, which will save us considerably because you have to buy these testing booklets that are quite expensive. So now patrons will be able to actually go online and be able to do like the ASVAB test, like the GED test, citizenship test. And so this type of resources that will be available online for folks, where before we would buy the testing booklets. We'll also have information, because we can't afford to buy a lot of books. We don't have the space either for biographical type materials. Then when we are requested to have information on biographies on individuals, and we do have that. We also have opposing viewpoints, which is also another database which gives the pros and cons of issues which are always being asked of us. Also, there's a small business resource center, and there's, in all of them, it's about 17 that we will be able to have. So I think it's money that's and it is online type information.
That's all, Supervisor Rivas. Any other questions from the board? Any questions, comments from the public?
I have no idea what my cell phone is doing. That's what it's not on anyway. Marty Richmond from Hollister. Just a note, I did a quick add up of the amount of money we're spending on the bad guys. What it costs this county to have a district attorney's office, probation office, sheriff's operations, not the whole sheriff's department, the jail, the juvenile hall. And I wonder if you guys have ever, I know it's not a budget issue. I wonder if you've just ever added it up. It's essentially $18 million. Okay? So we got $18 million we're investing in prosecuting, finding, arresting, prosecuting, jailing, and after they get out, trailing the people who are 10% of the population or less and causing 95% of our problems or more. I just want to point out that the library budget in total, not the cost of the county, but in total, is like 4% of that. Okay? I don't understand. I have to say this is not a reflection on this board, but I just do not understand the thought patterns in this nation where we're willing to spend every penny we can possibly come up with on these programs that do nothing but keep people in jail at $48,000 a year each. And we'd rather spend it there than somewhere else. I don't understand that, okay? I wish the public understood that they're not much safer. We lock somebody up in jail, somebody else comes, takes their place. They could probably lock up as many people as they wanted. And if that jail was twice as big, we'd fill it up. We know that. We're going to spend $15 million to build this jail extension just so we can fill it up. So I hope you will vote to give adequate funding to the library, because I support it. And I would just as soon rather that a couple of those kids did not cost me $48,000 a year to put in prison, because you can save a few for a couple of bucks. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from public would like to speak? If not, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Move to approve temporary due pass, Mr. Chair.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. That brings us to the last one, 89. Unless we could continue it to Wednesday.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Denise.
So how's no, 89, budget unit 999.
Okay, that budget unit is on page 241 of your budget packet. I believe I gave you a handout with your packet earlier this morning that shows contingencies from where we were on the May 28th meeting to today. And so just to highlight the changes that we made from the May 28th meeting to today, the treasurer had an adjustment due to net county cost, and Department 160 maintenance had an adjustment due to the contract for the janitorial services. In budget number 180, LAFCO had presented a budget that was different from what we estimated. In the sheriff's operations, we had an adjustment due to an anticipated retirement. The jail had an adjustment due to the funding of an additional correctional officer, the reduction of overtime, and then adding back the safety glass. And they also had an MOU adjustment in their salaries. Probation, Department number 224, had an adjustment in temporary salaries. And 226 Juvenile Hall had an adjustment in their salaries due to an upcoming MOU change. The Ad Commissioner had a change. He moved some people around between the Ad Commissioner and the Mosquito Department. And then we had an adjustment in the CBOs. And so that brought our today's contingencies to $470,397.
Do you want to?
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Okay. So then there's one more. That paper showed you how we went from the $680,000 in contingencies on May 28th to the $470,000 to today's, the adjustments and all the budgets to today. I have one more handout for you. This is what will be the appropriation for contingencies based upon your direction of a 3% contingency for each fund and some anticipated changes in the cost plan. We just received that on Friday. Ray has.
Yeah, and just
discuss them.
for clarity on that, you know, the budget was built on the assumptions of our current cost plan for fiscal year 12-13. Friday afternoon or so, we received word that that there was actually a little slight difference. There was going to actually be more funding in the general fund so there'll be actually more, but there'll be more expenditures on the Savannah. So we want to document that here in this particular item for your board to look at. So, Melinda.
Okay, so the sheet that I just handed out will be the appropriations for contingencies. That will include the 3% that your board directed that we put into contingency for each fund, and then also it will include the adjustments for the cost plan. So I kind of gave you both because I wanted you to see how we went from the contingency that we were talking about as the in the general fund, and then also these are going to be the actual contingencies that we're going to recommend.
So overall, for the general fund, it looks as though we'll have $187,000 more available on that side, and more expenditures. I believe it's about 300 or so thousand on the Savannah side. So, but we definitely wanted to make sure that that was addressed today during the budget hearing, and the board understood that.
I don't understand it yet. May I ask a
Yes.
question, Mr. Chair? I don't understand what we were just handed out. We have the appropriations for contingencies. You're telling me that in 2010, 2011, our contingency was actually almost $1 million. Is that correct? Am I reading this right?
Okay, when we put together the general, when we originally put together the budget, the general fund that we discussed of $680,000 on the May 28th meeting, that was just basically the expenditures minus the revenue, although we were going to have a little bit left using the funding sources that we had from the HSA, excess MOU, and what we anticipated the rollover to be. We were anticipating that from those funding sources plus revenue minus the expenditures that we would have, that we would be able to put $600,000 into contingencies.
Right, and I remember that. So it's this 681 that you have in this
In that
999.
one. And we had to make adjustments
Right.
between May and today.
Now, that one is okay. I understand that one. This is the one that you just
Okay.
handed out.
So that one includes that $600,000 plus your board directed us to put put 3% for each fund into a contingency.
Okay, so then that's the part that I wasn't clear on. So then for each of these departments that you have listed on the left, that dollar amount is
It's a reflection
of the
3%.
3%.
Correct.
Okay.
Plus the adjustment of
Plus.
what we're anticipating
Plus.
on the cost plan that we just received on Friday.
Okay. It's clear now. Thank you.
So Mr. Chair, so for clarity, one more too. So the reason, it probably wouldn't have been such a big deal we could probably move forward with it as is. However, the Savenid group is about, they're obligated to pay up over $300,000. So we didn't want to go mid-year or go through the year and then for them to we'd have to take it out of the contingency in a general fund. We want to make sure that it comes out of their fund balance. That's the reason why the $187,000, it wouldn't have mattered, could have went into the general fund balance. It wouldn't have been a big deal. But the other one, we definitely want to make sure that we're addressing now, today.
Okay.
That's a big difference.
Mr. Chair?
Big difference. Supervisor
Yeah,
Morales,
thank you.
Supervisor De La Cruz.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I can follow these numbers. The recommended 1314 general fund, they have $1.28 million. If I were to subtract the $470,387, is that correct? Okay, that comes up with $947,905. Break it down for me, that number.
On this paper?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess, yeah.
Okay, so the appropriations for contingencies on the paper I just handed out to you, in the general fund, if you take the 1,318,302 and subtract the 470 where we are today,
Got it?
that difference is what we're anticipating, the 3% plus or minus cost plan charges for the general fund
Okay.
to be at.
So it's going to be 947,000, 3%? Oh, no, wait a minute. That's 3% contingency fund plus the cost plan.
Plus or minus the cost plan.
Plus or minus. Got it. I got it.
Pretty good. Any other comments or Supervisor Barrios?
Yeah, so then, of the 3 million, thank you, Mr. Chair, the 3 million that we're showing here,
On the bottom.
right, we don't have a number for the plus or minus for the cost plan that we could, because that's really the real number, is
I do.
subtracting the cost plan
So
off
the
of that.
3 million is not what's going to be in the general fund. That's
Right.
just the total of
That
all
is
the
the total,
contingents
exactly.
of all the funds.
But I'm just wondering what the bottom line, because this is these numbers right here are actually what was, as we approved temporary due pass, we had all these additional cost plan items that made every department be a higher net county cost. But now this is the income part of it, the 3%. So the difference, right? And so that's what I'd like to know. Are we a plus or are we a minus at the bottom?
That's good. It should
I'm
balance.
sorry. I have
It
two
should.
people.
That's how it has to balance.
Well, she said plus or minus, and that's what I'm I'm curious about.
I'm sorry. I had two people talking at the same time. I'm sorry. Your question again?
Well, the question was, as we went through the temporary due pass of all of the departments, each one of them experienced a higher net county cost, most of them in the general.
In the,
Right. And it was as a result of the cost plan.
right.
But now here, what we're seeing is a 3% contingency that should reduce or make up for the cost plan. Is that correct, or am I reading this wrong? So it should balance out, so the net county
Correct.
cost is
In
going
the
to be.
general fund.
In the general fund.
Right. There will not be any impact on the general fund.
That's,
So
okay.
if the cost plan for the whole total general fund is a reduction, the revenue will also be, the expenditures and the revenues will be reductions.
Okay, so
But that's
it
not
should,
real
like
money.
Supervisor Patello said, it should zero out.
Right, on the general
On
fund.
the general fund.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I
So,
wanted
but
to
if
make
we're
sure.
anticipating an increase in some of the subvented funds, it will allow, these contingencies are built in so that it will allow for them to adjust their expenditures, and then it should also adjust, and then we would have more revenue coming into the general fund.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But we don't have the definite, complete numbers yet.
Right, and because it's a budget, you're taking an estimate,
Yeah.
pretty much, so,
Yeah.
okay.
And just for clarity, we just received those numbers Friday afternoon, so those are, and again, those are estimates, so.
Right.
We're trying to, the main thing is we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot coming down the road where all of a sudden the funds that, it was not budgeted in the subvented department, and then they would have to come out of the general fund contingency. We wouldn't want to do that.
Which would make no sense.
Make no
Because
sense.
that wasn't our goal
Yeah,
at all.
exactly.
So, okay.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Munzer?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so what number are we approving or doing the due pass?
For the contingencies, we're going to approve a total of $3,105,744. I know this is kind of confusing. It's just basically a budgeting tool. The board directed us to put 3% into contingencies, and so we're putting the 3% into contingencies. At the very last minute, we got some adjustments to the cost plan. In the general fund,
Yeah, that was where my question was, because I kept hearing that the general fund was increasing by $100 and some odd dollars. I thought I heard that. So
You mean the
with
contingency?
contingency fund was increasing by, instead of being 470
Oh, yeah.
and change, it was increasing by 100 and change. Is that what we're approving today? Without all,
Yeah, I mean, in essence, it's brighter for the general fund. We're receiving more funding, $187,000 in the general fund. Ultimately is what, but there's going to be more of a cost to the subvented departments of about 300. I don't know the exact numbers that they're in here, but they're all kind of buried within each one of these in the subvented fund. But when you add them up, it's about $300 and something thousand. So that's what we're bringing to your board right now. And again, this is last minute, and if we need to continue this and come back to you tomorrow at the,
I think that would be better to do just that, and then
Yeah.
we have it all right on one sheet, and you have the contingency at the number we need to be at. Why don't we do that and continue it to the afternoon, the last part of the afternoon tomorrow? Is that okay with the board?
yeah.
Okay, that would be great. All right, we'll continue this item to tomorrow afternoon as our last item.
So, Mr. Chair, one final question. So, of the 3.1 contingency, 1.8 is designated, right, Joe? That's not unassigned, correct?
It's less than that.
Well, if you take, well, it says 3.1.
Well, excuse me, this is a contingency. This is
Got it.
a planned, unplanned expenditure. This is not reserves. And I think what the staff is talking about doing is coming back with a revised sheet so it's a little bit clearer as to
Okay.
what the
I'm good for
change
that.
really
Okay,
is.
I'm good.
Okay. With that,
Do we need a motion to continue this till tomorrow?
I'll entertain a motion to continue the item then. Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, hearing none. We'll have that, we'll hear the rest of it tomorrow.
Okay.
And I want to thank our staff for probably the most successful budget hearings I've ever been a part of since I've been a supervisor. There was a lot of hard work by everybody involved, and it was very efficient. It was clear, easy to, I hope the public easy to follow, and excellent, outstanding job, and I really do appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, I want to echo the same thing, and it's really all about leadership, and I think your leadership, Ray, really made a difference in how this moved forward, and I want to thank you personally for that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. I'll have a motion to adjourn till tomorrow,
Do we need a motion?
to a regular board supervisor meeting.
Yeah. I'll move to adjourn to tomorrow regular meeting.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good, thank you. Public have to go on there. You have to come tomorrow during public comment and just say whatever you, I apologize.
Oh, no, I said, did you get to give credit?
Oh, you forgot to give credit to the public.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Everybody got credit but me.
But he didn't see that much
He wants
today.
his brownie pin for sitting through this.